So now let's take a look at more efficient methods of adding CSS to a page. In the previous lesson, we learned that inline styles and internal styles, while they get the job done and they have their use, they're not exactly beneficial to us when working on larger projects because we're not separating the content from the presentation, and depending on the size of our project, it can make overall development and maintenance quite difficult. So instead of writing our CSS inside the HTML file, the most common and efficient way of adding CSS to a page is with an external style sheet. And that's because when we use an external style sheet, we can change the look of an entire website with just one file. So let's see how that works. So first, we'll need to create a style sheet, and that's where we'll write our styles. So in our workspace, we'll create a new file by going over to File, New File. Then we're going to name our file style.css. And to keep our files nicely organized, we'll want to save it in our CSS folder. We can actually just click and drag the file inside the folder. And don't worry about the import styles file just yet. We're going to get to that later in this video. So the .css extension is what tells the browser that the file is a style sheet. So make sure you always add that .css extension to every style sheet you create. So next, we'll need to link the style sheet to our HTML file. And we can do that with HTML's link element. So we'll go over to the head section of our HTML file, and right beneath the title tag, we'll create a link tag. At the very least, we'll need to add 2 attributes to this link tag in order for our CSS file to link correctly. So first, we'll include the rel attribute, and this is an important attribute that specifies the relationship between the current HTML document and the linked document. So its value needs to be style sheet because that's what we're linking to. So this sort of tells the browser, hey, we're linking to a style sheet right here. And keep in mind that if this rel value is misspelled, so for instance, if we write style sheets instead of style sheet, the browser will not link to the style sheet. So make sure that it always reads style sheet. So after the rel attribute, we need to add an href attribute. And the href attribute is what points to the location of the CSS file. So we know that the new CSS file we created is inside the folder named CSS. So we need to write the path to the CSS file as css/style.css. So now we can save our index.html file and go over to our new style.css file, where we'll write a few styles for some of our elements. So first, let's style the body of the page by writing the word body, followed by a space and a set of curly braces. And inside the curly braces, we'll write text dash align, followed by a colon and a space, then the word center, and a semicolon. Right below that, let's style the h1 element. So we'll write h1, followed by a space and a set of curly braces. And inside the curly braces, we're going to type font-size, followed by a colon and a space, then 72 pixels and a semicolon. And below that, let's also write color, colon, space, and the word white, semicolon. Next, let's give our header an orange background color by writing header. Then inside the curly braces, we're going to type background dash color, colon, space, then the word orange, and a semicolon. And finally, let's add styles to our paragraph by writing P. Then we're going to write font dash size, colon, space, followed by 20 pixels and a semicolon. Again, don't worry if you're not sure what these styles mean right now. We're going to cover that part really soon. All you need to understand here is the concept of separating content from presentation. So now let's save our style sheet. And go over to the browser preview, and when we refresh the page, we can see how the external style sheet affects the page. So compared to the previous methods we used to add CSS, the advantage to using this external style sheet method is flexibility. We may have multiple HTML files linked to this style sheet, but as long as we keep our CSS in a separate file, any styling changes or additions we need to make are done in one file. Another advantage is that the style sheet is often cached by the browser after the first request, which saves on download time throughout the site or repeat visits, because the style sheet only needs to download one time. And if you're wondering why we write CSS or link to style sheets from the head section of the HTML document, well, that's more for page loading purposes. Even though CSS will still load if it's written or linked outside the head section, it's a standard practice to link to style sheets from the head of the document. That way, the browser loads and parses the style sheet first before any of the body elements. And this way, when our website is up on a web server and a user visits our site, the HTML is nicely styled right before it's presented to the user. And we can use more than one link tag if we need to link to different style sheets. Just keep in mind that each one requires a new request to the web server. I suggest linking no more than 3 style sheets, even on large, complex sites. I'll usually try to keep it at 1 or 2 linked style sheets.